Hi, welcome to Healing Streams. My name is Stephanie Lamangelo and I'm your host. And with me today is my best friend in the whole world, Miss Dawn Walker. She is an influencer. She has her own channel on YouTube called It Dawned on Me. She's also on TikTok and Instagram. Dawnie, thank you for coming today. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to be here. I am a recently retired school teacher. I wear many hats, and I love music. I have a very rambunctious baby that is a dog, so I'm a dog mom. And I'm just excited about what's ahead in my retirement journey.
So you recently retired, correct?
Yes, from elementary education. I taught for 29.5 years.
If you add other, if you add your student teaching, it's what, 31, something
Yeah,
like that? It's a
over
long,
30, yes, for
it's
sure.
a long time. So I will brag on Dawn because she will not brag on herself. She is a phenomenal teacher. She has been a huge gift to our community. And although the community is sad to see her not be teaching anymore, I'm really happy because I get to see her more. I've seen her more. I've talked to her more in the last 6 months than I feel like I have in the last 16 years. So
I agree. It's been fantastic.
I'm thankful for that. I'm just being
Thank you.
selfish. They've had you for a long time. Now I get to have my best friend back like it was years and years ago. So that's good.
It has
So
been fabulous.
it has been. Talking about um, our county has had a lot of losses recently. For those of you guys that don't know, on September 27th, Hurricane Helene caused massive, not just flooding. I want to get this out there. It caused massive flash flooding to the extent that some people have recorded like walls, literal walls of water rolling down the mountains. The people that lived by the river described it as like a huge wave that came down the river, 10, 20, sometimes 30 foot high, destroying everything in its path. So, Dawn, tell us a little bit about you were aware. I hate to laugh about it. I mean, I'd heard them say flooding, but we live in the mountains. So if you're in low lying places, everything runs down, and you're like, okay, well, I don't live by water. Some of the bridges might get washed out. But tell me about what you thought about the flooding that they were predicting before the actual flooding occurred.
I just assumed it would be like we've seen in the past. Like you said, if you live near a river or creek, that it would rise. Maybe the yard would be a little muddy, a little wet, but nothing like we experienced during Hurricane Helene. The winds were probably 30 miles per hour in some places.
Yeah, yeah, it was scary. Did you? I know for us, um, before I went to bed. So on that Thursday night, Friday was September 27th. On that Thursday
Hmm.
night, before I went to bed about 12:30, I was listening to all of the reports. I heard them start saying this was going to be the biggest flooding we'd ever had, and I knew some of the flooding that we had had before, like really how devastating it was. And so you know, just trying to make sure we had water and those kind of things. And so at 12:30 that night, I went down in my basement and there was water coming into our basement. Me and my husband dealt with that. It wasn't a huge deal. We were able to get it under control. And then we went to bed. But the next morning, the winds were so intense. For me, where my house is, I'm not near water. And we could see our driveway washing out because it goes around and up into our neighbors. We could see it washing out, and there was a small creek running down our driveway.
Hmm.
Um, but what seemed most threatening to me because of the trees around my house is the winds, and limbs were breaking off, and we had the kids pack bags, and everybody was sitting in the same area in case a tree came through our house. What did it feel like on your end, because you live in a different part of the county and you don't live near water just like me? You don't live close, there's not a creek right beside you or a river right beside you. But what did it feel like for you on that, through that night and that next morning as the eye of the hurricane came over us?
The night, um, it didn't seem like they were giving a lot of clear information on the report, because I'm sure, as of knowing now, they were unsure themselves what it would be like. Um, and, we didn't know that it was catastrophic by the extent until it was over.
Right.
So we went to bed around 11:30, and I could just feel the wind. And we'd had a lot of rain a few days before that, which had already saturated the ground,
Right.
and it wasn't prepared for what was coming on Saturday. So the next morning when we woke up, we have a tile that runs behind my house underground that was just spewing water. It's like a huge fire hydrant, basically, because there was so much water coming
Wow.
from the mountain. And both of our driveways, I have a person with the side of me that rents from us. Both of our driveways were washed, and the road was standing in water. We just couldn't believe it. It had calmed some by that time that morning, but the water was still rushing. Um, and we decided at that time to fill water jugs, because we hadn't done so. We had filled one bathtub with water, but we realized we probably need to get some water.
Right.
It was just a terrible shock.
Yeah. And I
And
think, um, that, did you, even though you could see all of that, did you still have any idea that, could you see, once the water started going down a little bit? Obviously that was the worst you had seen it on your property, but from where you were at, could you see like major devastation in, like, right from your porch?
no,
Yeah.
my husband decided that morning to go to town to get some gas for the generator. 'Cause, I can't remember if we were without power at that time or if that came later. I can't remember that.
I
But
think you lost power that day. I didn't. I think I didn't lose power until later that night. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you lost power that morning.
I think we had, because that's why he went to get gas for the generator. And of course, cell service was down. We had no way to call, make phone calls. We don't have a landline, so it would have been down anyway. There was no way to get communication out. So my husband decided to go to town, and I didn't know about the devastation till he came back. He was so pale when he got home, because the way we would go to town was blocked. So we had to take a side dirt road to get up on another highway to even get to town. And at that time, you couldn't get a lot of gas. They were limiting people getting gas already just the next morning. And the small town he had to go through to get to the bigger town to get gas, the small town was called Knoxville, and it was just completely mud, just debris. It was devastated.
Right. Right. So we both learned later, and I'm sure people, they saw it all over the news, but I don't think you can possibly understand the extent of the flooding unless you've been here, because we are, it's March 6th, that happened September 27th,
Hmm.
and even that small little township, whatever you want to call it, that we both grew up in, is still completely devastated. They don't even have it cleaned up yet.
No.
And the amount of debris and the amount of devastation is unreal, because I think what people don't understand is it wasn't just the water coming in. The land was washed away in a lot of areas. We lost miles and miles of roads. we had as many, in my understanding, in our county, we had as many deaths due to mudslides as we did to drownings. And of course, other counties, some counties, all of Western North Carolina got devastated, and we don't want to minimize that because it's horrible. But I know that they said the one chunk of road in our county that runs right along the river that we lost like 12 and a half or something miles of that down on 19W would take almost half of the original funds that were dispensed by the federal government just to repair that one area. I mean, the devastation has been unreal. But let's talk about what it has felt like for you living in the aftermath of that, because we've talked about how the first few days you're in shock and you're driving around. If you could get out, most people couldn't, but if you could get out, you're seeing places just like in Micaville. You know, you grew up with Micaville being the closest town, which is laughable because, you know, it had a general store and one restaurant, one beauty shop, and a post office, and they were in this size area, like literally right at the intersection. And then as we got older, there was a gas station like across the road. You know, one church, one like one of everything. There used to be a laundromat. There's not now. But we saw that post office. The restaurant's not been there for years, but we saw the post office. People saw it literally float away. And I think you were the one that sent me that video the first time, and how high the water, because it's just a creek going by that post office.
Yeah.
And so how did that feel for you? Because for me, it was like, it's like it washed away part of my childhood, and it was
Okay.
mentally very disturbing.
Yeah. Well, it was very heartbreaking to see the video of what occurred. I mean, the water was as high as the roof of the post office, and it just took it away. And there was an elementary school too that I went to school there, so
Right.
it's very, very hard to think about. And I was 7 before, in the flood of '77. I was 7 then, and I remember some about the flood. Of course, everything was recovered pretty much. I mean, the school was restored, and they were able to have school, and the country store was restored,
Hmm.
and the post office wasn't washed away. But this was totally different.
This was different. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we all grew up hearing about the flood of 77. I'm 4 years
Mhm.
younger than you, so I don't really, I was alive, but I don't remember it. I know my
Mhm.
parents talked about how that the National Guard had to come in, and people were, you know, without food and water and all those things. But the people that can really clearly remember that, like my parents, um, they they're like, this was like 100 times worse.
Yeah.
Nobody could even imagine. It's still, you can't wrap your head around how high the rivers got around
Mhm.
the devastation. So we've talked some about what I would call survivor's guilt, because there's not one person in our community that doesn't know someone that died in the floods, that wasn't
Mhm.
affected somehow by somebody that died. And more than just somebody that died, the hundreds and hundreds of people that were displaced from their houses, because their
Yeah.
houses were either completely swept away, or they had 8 foot of mud in their houses. And so for me, it just started feeling like, you know, you're feeling this, you're feeling the shock, you're feeling the pain, you're feeling the pain for the people that have lost, you're feeling your own grief, but there's a part of you that feels like you're not even allowed to grieve because I'm still sitting in my house. you're still sitting in your house. Is that something you've dealt with? I know we've talked about it before. Is that because sometimes I still feel like, oh, am I allowed? Am I allowed to complain about anything because there's still people living in hotels? What do you think
Yes,
about that?
yes, I definitely feel that way. I had a really hard time just a couple of days there of just why is my house here?
Yeah,
It makes me emotional
yeah,
still.
yeah.
Why is my house here when people that live 5 minutes from me have no home to go to, or
Right.
homes are with mud? Um, it's still that way now.
Yeah.
The homes that were devastated in that section still have mud, they still have mold. They're
Mm-hmm.
still working on trying to see if the houses are recoverable and can be rebuilt as far as the bones of the house. They still don't know that. So I still have, I guess, that guilt feeling of
Mm-hmm.
my life. And almost, I mean, looking on the outside in, you would say, well, she really wasn't affected. Physically, my home, no, I wasn't affected. But mentally and emotionally, I was affected. I think we all were.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think that, I know people that, well, my brother, my sister-in-law, they got 2 to 3 foot of mud in their house. Both of their driveways were washed out. They were stranded in their house for a while, or just couldn't get out because the road was washed away. Because, as you know, they live down by a river, and then my parents, the creek that was in front of their house comes all the way up. Thankfully, it didn't take their house, but it did take their camping property that was down on South Toe, which was devastating to them because that's where we had all of our birthday parties and family stuff. And but then I know a woman that was rescued from her house. I know a woman that's a good friend of mine that had to be airlifted out of her and her
Mm-hmm.
husband out of the area off of Cattail, which is up on Pensacola. That's been on the news a lot. That area has been, because it's just unreal what people went through up there. And that, not just from the flooding, but the mudslides. That's where I think the majority of the ones that took lives happened. There was a lot that happened to the rest of our county that just swept away things and roads. And but even she, when I was talking to her, she was like, well, I'm still alive. And while it's good to look at the positive, this is what I said to her: you have gone through a huge traumatic situation, and you are allowed to grieve that. And even she has this survivor's guilt,
Mm-hmm.
where she's not allowed to complain. A house devastated, airlifted out, because some of her neighbors died. You know, and it's weird how we automatically downplay what has happened to us. But I feel like 100%. One of my friends that runs the local pregnancy center here, or used to be called the Pregnancy Center, now it's called My Life Center, I think. She said to someone that wanted to give money to this area, but they wanted to give money to somebody that had been affected in this area, and she got a little feisty with them, and
Mm-hmm.
just said, if you live in Western North Carolina, you've been affected, because homes are destroyed, industry is destroyed, business is destroyed, our land is destroyed. The landmarks that we knew of how to navigate are gone. I mean, absolutely, it's absolutely crazy. And I know that different people. Obviously, we have a lot of the same people, but different people. Do you have, I mean, have you seen the same thing that I've seen, where even people that that they're completely devastated, they feel like they're not allowed to say it's bad because they know somebody because the fact that they're still alive, they know somebody who lost somebody, so they feel guilty saying anything about their own loss.
Yeah, 100%. I have a friend who was on Cattail as well. They were airlifted to safety. Her husband pulled her out of starting to be landslide, and that he saved her basically. Actually, they're not married yet; they're engaged, but they were taken by helicopter. And for a long time, we all thought that she didn't make it because the house was taken. And I just talked to her 2 weeks ago, and they have finally gotten a house in Mitchell County, which is about 30 minutes from here, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And still, she has tears in her eyes talking to me about the goodness of God
Right.
and
Yeah.
how she still feels guilty.
Yeah.
There was others that weren't as blessed as she was to make it, and so thankful to have a home.
Yeah.
Wow, it's all her own.
Yeah.
Mm,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
a lot of stories similar in that.
A lot of stories. And I think that we all want to honor the people that ultimately lost their lives and the families that lost their loved ones. But at the same time, I think we just want to give light to the fact that we all lost. We're all still struggling. And it's okay to feel devastated by this. It's okay to still feel that sense. I know recently, was it in the last 2 weeks, that we were supposed to get heavy rains?
Hmm.
And that was, when you heard that, when you heard we were supposed to get heavy rains, how did it hit you?
Anxiety, for sure.
Yeah.
And um, just, I started praying for those who are still living in campers and tents in that area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even the sound, we've had really strong winds for the past 2 nights, and
We have.
even hearing that roar of the wind, I even heard the news anchor out of Asheville say on the news, this is not Hurricane Helene. This is not a Hurricane Helene situation. So even for a newscaster to say that, tells you the impact to the people in
Yeah.
Western North Carolina.
Yeah, I think it has become definitely our new measuring point. But yeah, it's scary because when you hear about floods, you're like, no, because we have roads that, well, are still gone. We have roads that are in the process of being built back. We have a lot of roads and driveways that are still gravel or
Mm-hmm.
just dirt, packed dirt, because they're having a hard time
Yeah,
getting enough gravel in. And I mean, because how do you replace millions of tons of land that are gone? And that's what it is.
mm-hmm.
But I think in the midst of it, we saw we saw what we love about this area.
100%.
I live near the main highway. You're more off in a holler, as the people around here would call it. But I immediately, started seeing traffic, even though we had no clue from where we were at how devastated the county was. If we had gone 100 yards one way or the other, we would have seen it. But just directly from our house, you couldn't see it. But immediately you heard chainsaws, four-wheelers, and, people
Something like that.
clearing and trying to get out. My husband, our neighbor who runs the radio station, went out at 4 o'clock because he was trying to keep the radio station up so people could have communication. But then this huge, 100-foot at least oak tree fell over his driveway, so he couldn't get back home to his wife. And so that's what my husband did while our neighbor was at work trying to clear that. And that's what everybody was doing, checking on everybody. And it's been immediately, I don't want to get into the whole FEMA discussion because it's just a lot of raw there, but a lot of help poured into this area. But for the first 3 days, it was nothing but the locals, just helping the locals. And
Yeah.
I've always been proud to be from Yancey County. I've always been proud to be from the mountains of Western North Carolina. But I've probably never been more proud than to see the sacrifice and to see how tirelessly people worked and to save lives, because for days there was search and rescue going on, days and days and days. And without equipment to do it, it was just regular people saving their neighbors. And, you know, it would have been great if we could have saved all of them, but at the same time, without the heroism and the heart in this area, we would have seen a whole lot more death and devastation. And it really makes me very proud
Yeah.
to be from here. It really does.
It's good people. Good people here.
Yeah, we have
It's a huge community.
we have tremendous people, tremendous. So in that vein, another thing that we both have expressed feeling guilty about is if I hadn't had little kids and I wasn't physically dealing with the things I was dealing with, me and my husband would have both been out 24 hours a day, just, you know, doing what we could. But because of our situation, my personal health situation, and then we couldn't do that. I mean, we did what we could. We carried water to people in it, you know, but we would have, I mean, I'm a medical provider. I would have been going out to people's houses. I would have been doing that. But I had to stay here with my family, and I wasn't physically able to do that. And you want to share a little bit about your situation and how that made you feel, not that you couldn't go out and do those things?
Yeah, so I was supposed to have knee replacement surgery October the 8th. I was in horrible pain. So due to my limitation, I wasn't able to get out and do much. My husband fixed tractor and cleared driveways for our neighbors. And it was just amazing because of my physical limitation. He had to take care of me. I was trying to cook food and keeping the generator going. And it, it was just something.
Yeah.
We actually had a neighbor that had an outside faucet. And at that time, we didn't have the tractor and trailers filled with water that was accessible. So he just sent word by neighbors to neighbors on four-wheelers, come, you know, access the water from our faucet.
Yeah.
So we were able to do that a couple of times, but even in that was very painful for me and very trying for me. But seeing neighbors at that faucet and just conversations, and this one had crackers that they were sharing with this neighbor, and just the way people were coming together just to help in our small little community where I live was great. But I still face that I want to be doing something. The elementary schools were doing things at that time for families, and I wanted to be a part of that.
Right.
But it was way I couldn't.
Right.
So those limitations were real, but that doesn't mean the heart wasn't willing and wanted to be.
Right. Absolutely. It just becomes a whole mental battle of
Sure does.
letting yourself be, instead of being the rescuer, you're the one that kind of needs to be rescued. And that's hard, because I think our identities, I mean, I can only speak to being raised in the mountains of Western North Carolina, and you weren't supposed to be a taker. You're supposed to be a giver.
Yeah.
And we had problems with that here, because even people that needed stuff, when supplies started coming in, didn't want to get the stuff. because somebody else might need it worse. And the amount of supplies coming in was unreal. But like that, it's that whole thing. It is
Mhm.
that whole thing of it's okay. It's okay to have a need. It's okay to express pain about this. And I think that's just what we really wanted to shed light on. And the fact that we're still recovering, that we will be, the scars of this flood will forever, forever be on the
Forever.
land of Western North Carolina because
Yeah.
it has restructured our rivers. It's restructured our land and our roadways, and but just the practical side of rebuilding, and well, we can't even rebuild yet because we still have so much debris and mess. I mean, it's unreal. But that's going to take years. And just to let people know, I know we had talked about it. Samaritan's Purse is building a bunk area here to house
Mm.
volunteers. So for those that are like, well, it's over and they don't need help. No, no, no. We need tons of help.
Yeah.
And Samaritan's Purse is specifically building bunk housing areas to house the people that are still here, that have been here the whole time, and people that want to come in. I think Baptist Men's Association is doing the same thing. I know my good friend Stephanie Johnson has, I always get the name wrong, Rebuilding the Hollers. Is it called Rebuilding the Hollers?
Mhm.
I should know these things, but it's a different name in my mind because I make up things sometimes. And so, and she is working tirelessly to get people the
Mhm.
building supplies they need. So that has been for people. No, I just spit all over the place. For people that want to help this area, the volunteer need is great.
Yeah.
The need finances for finances. You want to do something to help this area? Find a family and send them some money because people got hit so hard, so hard. The need for building supplies and skilled skilled people to come in, but we could put our own skilled people back to work if people had the finances to do it. And
Yeah.
I think people are ashamed to ask for money. Wouldn't you say that?
Absolutely. In this area, yes,
Yeah,
people should probably ask for that.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
taught such independent.
You're taught to
Um,
be. Mm-hmm.
you know,
It's so
it's,
true. So we're
mhm.
going to ask for money for them.
Yeah.
We're not. I am not collecting money. Do not hear me say I'm collecting money. But just know there are a lot of local resources that are giving people money and buying people tools and buying people building supplies and that kind of stuff, helping them get back on their feet again.
Mhm.
We would encourage anybody to, or I would, I don't want to speak for Dawn, but I would encourage anybody to donate to Samaritan's Purse specifically for this area, to donate to the Baptist Men's Association. I know there are a lot of local churches that are probably still taking donations. Rebuilding Hollers with Stephanie Johnson again is a trustworthy one. But I also
Mhm.
caution you to be careful about who you give money to. I know there's a lot of money that's come into this area, and I'm not sure that it's all been given where it needed to be. So those are three that we know are really trustworthy. Or
Mhm.
if you just know a local family, you know they live in this area, don't ask them what they need. They ain't going to tell you. They are not going to tell you.
True.
Send them a gift
Very true.
card. I mean, don't you agree, Dawn? Don't you think that
Absolutely.
don't ask, don't call them and say, what do you need? Because most people are not going to tell you. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but
No,
just,
they're going to say, we're making it.
we're fine. We're okay. Well, yeah, I've told all kinds of lies like that. I know you have too. I know everybody else in our county has. And I am compared to somebody that doesn't have a house. It's that fear of sounding like you're ungrateful for what you have. You're always supposed to be grateful. And we are
Hmm.
extremely
Yeah.
grateful for where we live and what we have. But at the same time, this area is still hurting. So definitely keep us in your prayers. Um, so I think we're going to wrap it up. Dawn, thank you for being here. We have been friends for, since the Flintstones were running around
That's right. Barefoot.
barefoot. We used to drive around cars like that. Um,
Yeah.
so, no, at least since the Flintstones were really popular, we'll go with that one.
That's right.
And I encourage you guys to go. It Dawnied, DAWNIED on me. It Dawnied on me. And is that your Instagram and I don't even know how Instagram works. That's your TikTok and your YouTube, right? Is it
Yes,
also
ma'am.
how they find you on Instagram?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I'm just going to throw out there, this is random and has nothing to do with flooding. Donnie just went through yes, I call her Donnie. When I'm trying to be professional, I call her Dawn, but I call her Donnie. She just went through a knee replacement and she's been doing fabulously encouraging videos about that and how you can recover from that, and her struggles with lipedema and how that affected her knee surgery, how she's recovering from that, and also has just started to post some videos about how the death of her brother and her father, which she has agreed to come and tell the stories of that, and also is it okay if I tell a little bit of the details? I don't want to.
That's fine.
Okay,
That's
so
fine.
Dawn's mom passed before her brother and her dad did, but her brother and her dad died in a very tragic house fire. And which devastated our community,
Hmm.
but obviously shook Dawn's whole world. And she has been tremendous through all of it. God has shown her so much, and she has so much to share. And she's going to come back on sometime and share that with us. And you're going to see her a lot because we've lived a lot of life together. So
Yeah.
we have a lot to talk about. But thank you so much for being here. I need you to like and subscribe to my channel, and click on the notification bell so you know when we got new videos up. Thank you. God bless you. We're excited to talk to you again. Bye.
Thank you, Stephanie.